One big problem most fighters face in the UFC is weight cuts. It's extremely painful, hard to go through, and sometimes can be the reason why a fighter doesn't perform as expected. So in this video, we'll be taking a look at the 10 biggest weight cuts fighters have undergone in recent UFC history. You'd be shocked what these fighters go through just to make weight. So sit tight and let's begin. Number 10. Max Holloway. Although we have come to discover that Max Holloway is a bit small for lightweight at the moment, but that doesn't mean his weight cuts to 145 pounds are easy. The former featherweight champion is known for his love of sweets, and that has led him to putting on a few more pounds than what he would normally prefer. As a result, he has looked pretty scary when weighing in. The most brutal example of this came when Holloway was looking for his second title defense in an immediate rematch against Jose Aldo. When he took to the scales, the normally jovial and lighthearted Holloway was silent and solemn, with his face severely sucked in. It was one of the worst things we have ever seen him go through, even compared to some of his fights inside the cage. Number 9. Chris Weidman. Former UFC middleweight champion Chris Weidman never missed a weigh in his career. Being an NCAA wrestler, he grew up about the process of weight cuts, and as such was ultra-professional. That being said, this does not mean it was not a hard task. By far, the worst Weidman ever looked on the scales was prior to his bout with Damian Maia at UFC on Fox 2. Prior to the fight, Chris was super heavy and needed to drop 32 pounds in 10 days. He would somehow make the 185-pound mark, cutting 17 pounds of water weight in 24 hours, and looked horrendous along the way. Number 8. Yoel Romero. The legacy of Yoel Romero would be much different had it not been for his issues with weight cuts. The Cuban was granted 4 opportunities to fight for an interim or undisputed title, but missed weight for 2 of them in a row, making him ineligible for the title. This led to him not winning the interim belt despite knocking out Luke Rockhold. The most Romero came in heavy was 2.7 pounds over the 185-pound title fight limit. Nevertheless, even when he made weight, he looked absolutely drained in the process. Number 7. Daniel Cormier. Another fighter who is ever professional is Daniel Cormier. He never missed weight, even though there were a few controversies. However, it was clearly much more challenging for him to make weight when he dropped from heavyweight to light heavyweight. The true extent of the difficulties he had making weight were seen at UFC 214. Prior to his rematch with John Jones, DC stepped on the scale looking sickly. With his face sunken in and him clearly dehydrated, this was one of the worst situations he had put himself in before a fight. He would go on to lose the contest via TKO before it was overturned to a no contest. Number 6. Jessica Eye. Heading into her main event bout in June of 2020, Jessica Eye was expected to be something of a sacrificial lamb to rising star Cynthia Calvillo. She had just 1 victory since fighting for the flyweight title, and she missed weight by a massive 6 pounds for the fight. However, this was not a one-time issue for Evil Eye. Taking to the scales, Eye weighed in at 126.25 pounds, just a quarter of a pound over the 1-pound allowance for a non-title fight. Although this was not as bad of a miss as her previous outing, what makes this one of the worst weight cuts in UFC history is her demeanor on the scale. Despite the ability to take some time to cut the last bit of weight, Jessica, who was struggling to stand, said that she was done and could not cut anymore. It's not often to see a fighter quit so close to the mark, so that shows how hard this was for her to do. Number 5. Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev's most recent outing inside the octagon was a highly competitive bout against Alexander Volkanovski. Prior to their matchup, much of the conversation surrounding it revolved around the difference in size between the Dagestani phenom and the reigning featherweight kingpin. The lightweight title holder is massive for the weight class, with many describing him as a welterweight, cutting to 155 pounds. This means he has a history of difficult weight cuts, and his most recent weigh-in was no different. He looked sunken and gaunt, with even Michael Bisping expressing concerns about the weight cut. Fortunately, the Dagestani grappler made weight for his bout, but it doesn't discount how frightening the entire process was. Number 4. Mizuto Hirota. Taking on Ronnie Yaya in 2013, Mizuto Hirota almost could not make it to the contest. Before the featherweight debut, the UFC veteran tried to take the scale to meet the 146-pound limit. However, he nearly passed out on the scale due to him having one of the scariest weight cuts ever seen. Needing assistance to make it to the scale, Hirota stood while the measurements were taken. After successfully weighing in, he began to sway backwards, looking like he was going to pass out. Luckily, he was assisted off the platform, ultimately making it to fight night, and losing a unanimous decision. Number 3, Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee was not going to let anything stop him from making it to his interim lightweight title fight against Tony Ferguson. As it turned out, the Motown Phenom was actually bold enough to hide from the Athletic Commission that he had a staph infection. That being clear, it was pretty clear to see the spot on his chest, especially during the weigh-ins. As a result of this battle with staph, Lee had one of the hardest weight cuts of his entire career, saying that it almost killed him. He missed weight at first, but managed to cut the rest of the weight to make the championship limit. In the end, however, these factors would lead to him gassing out in the bout, losing via submission. Number 2, Conor McGregor. When UFC superstar Conor McGregor was first rocketing through the promotion, he was doing so by competing at featherweight. However, these weight cuts to 145 pounds were always extremely challenging. Frankly, all of his featherweight fights could end up on this list for how poorly he looked on the scale. That being said, there is one particular event that really stood out with its brutality. When McGregor was set to fight Dennis Siver, he weighed in at his required weight limit, yet his gaunt and sunken appearance garnered a ton of negative press afterward, leaving fans concerned to see him like that. Nevertheless, he won that fight, as well as the rest of his fights at featherweight, before moving up and understandably never looking back. Number 1, Anthony Johnson. By far, the biggest poster child for unbelievable weight cuts is Anthony "Rumble" Johnson. Before he was a gigantic bodybuilder, and even before he was sending light heavyweights into the nether realms, Johnson somehow used to fight at welterweight. Although there were times he missed weight, his most disturbing appearance was when he made weight before fighting against Josh Kujak. The issue was still evident when Johnson was forced up to middleweight by the UFC. He was set to face Vitor Belfort, but missed weight by an insane 12 pounds, leading to his release from the UFC. After this, he found his true place at light heavyweight, making his way back to the UFC and fighting for the title on 2 separate occasions. So what did you think of our list? Were there any brutal weight cuts that we missed? Let us know in the comments section below. Once you're done, check out either video shown on your screen right now. They're just as awesome. So click on any, and we'll see you there.